This presentation is for the course PHN 314 Microprocessors and Peripheral Devices, and the topic that I've chosen for my presentation today is non-volatile memory using the floating gate MOSFET. And these are the contents that I'm going to cover in today's presentation, so you may have a look. Now I begin with the classification of semiconductor memory. Semiconductor memory is divided into non-volatile and volatile based on whether the memory device retains the data stored in it when the external voltage is removed from it, and based on that it is divided. So under the volatile subdivision, there is a further subdivision between SRAM and DRAM, and in the non-volatile subdivision, based on the amount of rewritability you want from your memory device, it is further divided into ROM, which has limited or no rewritability, and RAM, which has rewritability again. Now this should confuse you a little because I've placed RAM both under the volatile and the non-volatile subdivision. So this is clarified in the next slide. In this slide, I expand upon the actual difference between RAM and ROM. So ROM, which is read-only memory, contrary to its name, actually has random access capability, but the ease of reprogramming is lesser than RAM. And RAM, on the other hand, has an equal opportunity of rewrite and read, whereas ROM is predominantly used for reading, but still still the data can be rewritten on it. And based on this capability of whether the ROM has data that can be rewritten or not, it is further divided into a spectrum. I'll discuss each one of them. So the first one is masked program ROM. So this memory device is actually the regular ROM that we speak of, and the data that is stored in it is actually stored by the manufacturer at the time of the manufacturing, and henceforth that data cannot be edited or changed at all. The next is programmable ROM. So this programmable ROM uses fuses, and at the time of manufacturing, all the fuses come in with the state 1 stored in them, which implies that all the fuses are connected in the circuit. And it is the choice of the user to blow out the selective fuses so that that state becomes 0, and thus this ROM can be programmed in that way. So now the ROMs that are discussed henceforth are all based on the floating gate MOSFET. The first of these is the erasable programmable ROM, or the EPROM. Now this actually overcomes one of the limitations of the programmable ROM, which is that it can be rewritten multiple amounts of times. That means it can be erased. But the limitation associated with this type of EPROM is that it can only be erased in one go, and it erases the entire memory device. So all your data goes in one go. This is because this is not electrically erased. The mechanism for erasure is UV light or X-ray light, and this is because the floating gate MOSFET of each memory cell is actually electrically isolated from any circuit during the time of manufacturing. So only light can penetrate through and cause the erasure process. The next is the flash EEPROM, or the flash electrically erasable programmable ROM. This again overcomes the previous one's limitation, and now a certain amount of memory blocks can be erased at one time, and the whole memory device does not need to be erased at the same amount of time. And so in a sense, partial erasure is possible, but only in selective blocks. The next is the EEPROM, or the electrically erasable PROM, and this again overcomes the previous one's limitation, wherein each memory cell can selectively be erased. But the limitation associated with this is that each memory cell now also carries one selection transistor, which increases the number of transistors per unit cell, which increases the cost and the surface area of the device, and hence this is not as popular as the flash. Now the last one among these is the non-volatile RAM. This can be considered a non-volatile version of the SRAM, and this is said to be an EEPROM with short programming time as well as high endurance. So this particular memory device is at the moment in research and development phase, and I think at the moment the properties of matter that are being used to make this memory device are ferroelectricity and magnetoresistivity. Okay, now moving on. I've actually thrown around terms like programming, erasure, and the floating gate MOSFET in the presentation up till now, and I'll proceed to explain these terms in the following slides. So now focusing on how MOSFETs are used to form memory devices. So it was discovered that when the gate electrode of a MOSFET is modified in such a way that it can hold a certain amount of charge, this hence formed device can be used as a memory device. This was discovered by Zay and Kang in 1967. Now, based on the mechanism used to store the set charges in the gate of the MOSFET, these devices can be broadly categorized into two categories: the floating gate devices and charge trap devices. I'll only be discussing the former in this presentation. In both such devices, charges are injected from the silicon substrate across the first insulator and stored in the floating gate or the nitric oxide interface. Now, once the charge is stored in the gate of the MOSFET actually gains two states, one where the charge is stored and the second when the charge is not stored. Now, we still need to program, or we still need to define a process by which we can differentiate between these two states, and hence we can model the state 0 and 1 in using this property of the MOSFET. Now, before describing such a process to you, I'd like to describe the mechanisms associated with the storage of charge and the erasure of charge from the floating gate of the MOSFET. So, charge is stored by one of the following two processes. The first one is hot carrier injection. So, when an electric field is established between the source and the drain of the MOSFET, carriers gain lateral velocity, and this lateral velocity is very high near the gate. So, a certain fraction of electrons actually get the energy to overcome the barrier associated with the SiO2, or the insulator that is used in the floating gate, and thus a certain fraction of charge goes and gets stored in the floating gate. The second process is tunneling, which involves quantum tunneling directly into the floating gate, and since the floating gate is an insulator, the charge cannot move freely there, so it gets stored there. Now, charge erasure can only be done by process of quantum tunneling, and this is exactly the reverse process of the one I discussed just now. So finally, I'd like to describe the process of how the 0 and the 1 state in memory is modeled using this MOSFET device. So when a charge Q is stored in the floating gate of a MOSFET, it generates an electric field around it, and this actively screens the electric field due to the control gate, which in turn causes the threshold voltage for the whole MOSFET to increase. When the floating gate does not contain any charge, this screening process doesn't occur and the threshold voltage remains as it is. So now, based on the threshold voltage, we've generated two states out of the single MOSFET. Now, as shown in the figure, one of these can be modeled as the state 1 and one of these can be modeled as the state 0. Now, how is a memory stored using such a device? So if I operate my MOSFET at a certain voltage which is between the two threshold voltages, I'll call the lower threshold voltage VT1 and the higher threshold voltage VT2, and the voltage that we're operating at is VO. So when VO is greater than VT1, the current flows in the MOSFET device because the threshold voltage is lesser than the voltage we're operating at. But when the charge is stored in the floating gate, then the threshold voltage increases, and then VO is less than VT2. So hence no charge flows in the circuit, and hence the current in the circuit is 0. So hence this MOSFET device can be used similar to a fuse or a diode in the normal programmable ROMs, but with the difference that this can be selectively reprogrammed by setting the voltage of the floating and the control gates at our discretion. So this is how memory is, at least semiconductor memory, is physically realized in a system. These are the references that I followed for making this presentation, and you can refer to these for more information on any of these above topics. Thank you.